Before we get into the story, leave a comment and let us know what city you're watching from. And don't forget to rate the story from 0 to 10 at the end. Enjoy the story. The August sun blazed mercilessly over downtown Chicago, turning the pavement into a shimmering oven. Madison Cole stood on the curb outside Fletcher's Market, arms straining under the weight of 4 overstuffed grocery bags. Her ancient sedan had chosen this precise moment, naturally, to refuse to start, leaving her stranded 3 blocks from her apartment with what felt like half the store's inventory. Sweat trickled down her temple as she juggled the bags, trying to free one hand to check her phone. The paper handles bit into her palms, and she could feel a tomato slowly crushing itself against a carton of eggs. Perfect. Just perfect. This was exactly how her day had been going since she'd spilled coffee on her laptop that morning, received a rejection email from the gallery she'd been courting for months, and discovered her landlord had raised the rent. Again. A delivery scooter pulled up to the curb, and Madison's eyes locked onto the rider before her brain could fully process what she was seeing. Tall, probably 6'2", wearing a plain black t-shirt and dark jeans. The helmet obscured most of his face, but she could see strong jawline and what looked like expensive sunglasses. Her desperation overrode any sense of propriety. "Excuse me," she called out, shifting the bags awkwardly. "I know this is completely random, but my car died, and I'm drowning in groceries here. Would you mind helping me carry these to my building? It's just 3 blocks. "I can pay you $20. The man paused, one foot still on the scooter. He seemed to be considering her offer, head tilted slightly. Madison held her breath. "Please don't let him think I'm some kind of lunatic. I'm not usually this forward," she added quickly. "But one of these bags has ice cream, and at this rate, it'll be soup before I make it home." The man pulled off his helmet, and Madison's breath caught. He was striking in that casual, understated way that suggested he had no idea how good-looking he was. Dark hair slightly mussed from the helmet, gray eyes that seemed to assess her with quiet amusement, and a faint smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Sure," he said simply, his voice deeper than she expected. "No payment necessary." Madison blinked. Really, she couldn't hide the relief in her voice. "You're a lifesaver." He dismounted smoothly and reached for the 2 heaviest bags without asking which ones to take. His hands were strong, capable, but Madison noticed they weren't the rough, calloused hands she might have expected from someone doing delivery work. In fact, now that she looked more closely, there was something off about the whole picture. No company logo on the scooter, no insulated delivery bag, and those sunglasses she'd glimpsed were definitely designer. But her arms were screaming, and the ice cream was melting. She wasn't about to interrogate her good Samaritan. "I'm Madison, by the way," she offered as they started walking. The man glanced at her, that subtle smile still there. "Carter." "Nice to meet you. Madison who bribes strangers with $20. She laughed despite herself. "Hey, desperate times call for desperate measures." Besides, $20 for 3 blocks is a pretty good deal in this economy. Is it? Carter's tone was light, teasing. "I wouldn't know. I usually work for free." Madison shot him a sideways glance. "That's a terrible business model." He chuckled, a low, warm sound. "I'll keep that in mind." They walked in companionable silence for half a block, Madison stealing glances at her unexpected helper. Everything about him seemed quietly expensive. The way he moved, fluid and confident. The watch on his wrist that caught the sunlight, simple but clearly not from a department store. Even his scooter, now that she thought about it, looked too sleek, too pristine to be a working vehicle. "So," Carter ventured after a moment, "do you always shop like you're preparing for the apocalypse, or is today special?" Madison groaned. "Today's special in the worst possible way. My car broke down. I got rejected by an art gallery. My rent just went up. And this morning, I killed my laptop with French roast. Hence the stress shopping. I bought ingredients for comfort food I don't have time to cook. Carter's expression shifted, something like understanding flickering in those gray eyes. Sounds like you earned the ice cream at least. What kind? Salted caramel brownie. Madison sighed. Though at this point, it's probably salted caramel soup. We're almost there. He adjusted his grip on the bags. It'll survive. There was something calming about his presence, Madison realized. Most strangers would have asked a dozen questions by now, or worse, offered unsolicited advice about her problems. But Carter simply walked beside her, carrying half her burden literally, and somehow making the oppressive August heat feel a little less suffocating. They turned onto Madison Street, a tree-lined block of old brownstones that had somehow survived gentrification by sheer architectural stubbornness. Her building was the third from the corner, its brick facade weathered but dignified. That one, she pointed. Third floor walk-up, I'm afraid. No elevator. Of course not. Carter's smile widened. Wouldn't be a proper rescue without stairs. Madison fumbled for her keys as they climbed, acutely aware that she was leading a complete stranger into her building. Her mother's voice echoed in her head, warning about trusting people too easily. But something about Carter felt safe. Maybe it was the way he'd agreed to help without hesitation. Maybe it was the careful way he held her groceries, making sure nothing got crushed. Or maybe, a small voice whispered, it was the way he'd looked at her when she mentioned being rejected by the gallery, like he actually cared. They reached her door, and Madison unlocked it, pushing it open to reveal her modest studio. Afternoon light streamed through the single large window, illuminating her easel in the corner, canvases stacked against the wall, and the general organized chaos of someone who lived and worked in the same small space. Carter set the bags on her tiny kitchen counter, looking around with what seemed like genuine interest rather than judgment. You paint, Carter observed, nodding toward the easel where an unfinished cityscape waited. Madison set down her bags, immediately beginning to unpack before anything else could melt or spoil. Yeah, I'm an artist. Or trying to be one, anyway. Today's rejection was number 17 this year, but who's counting? She forced a laugh that didn't quite hide the disappointment underneath. Carter moved closer to the easel, studying the painting with an attention that made Madison nervous. Most people glanced politely and moved on. He actually looked at it, his eyes tracing the brushstrokes, the interplay of light and shadow she'd worked so hard to capture. This is good, he said finally, and something in his voice told Madison he meant it. Really good. The way you've captured the reflection in the windows, it's like the building is breathing. Madison paused, a container of yogurt halfway to the refrigerator. That's exactly what I was trying to do. She felt a flutter of validation, rare and precious. Most people don't see that. Carter turned to face her. Then most people aren't looking closely enough. What gallery rejected this? Madison named the gallery, a prestigious space in River North, known for launching emerging artists. Carter's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Information filed away, perhaps. Their loss, he said simply. Madison smiled, genuinely this time. You're very kind for a delivery guy who works for free and gives art criticism. I should tip you an ice cream instead of cash. Actually, Carter leaned against her counter, and Madison noticed again how he carried himself, how he inhabited space with the ease of someone accustomed to being in control. I should probably confess something. Madison's hands stilled. Oh God. You're not actually a delivery person, are you? You're a serial killer who targets women with too many groceries. He laughed, a full, genuine sound that transformed his face. No, not a serial killer. But you're right about the delivery person part. I was just out riding when you flagged me down. Madison felt heat creep into her cheeks. Oh God. I basically forced a random stranger to carry my groceries. I'm so sorry. I just assumed because of the scooter. Don't be sorry, Carter said quickly. Best case of mistaken identity I've had in years. Besides, he gestured around her studio. I gotta see your work. That alone made it worth the 3 blocks. There was something in the way he said it, a warmth that made Madison's heart skip in a way that had nothing to do with embarrassment. She busied herself putting away the remaining groceries, hyper-aware of his presence in her small space. So what do you actually do? She asked, trying to sound casual. When you're not being mistaken for delivery services? Carter hesitated, and Madison sensed him weighing his words. I work in business, investments, mostly. That explains the expensive watch, Madison thought but didn't say. Instead, she pulled out the ice cream, only slightly softer than it should be. Small miracle. Want some? As a thank you for the grocery rescue and the ego boost? Carter checked his watch, that simple gesture somehow elegant. I should probably get going, but he didn't move toward the door. Madison found 2 spoons, and the ice cream was definitely soft enough now. She handed him a spoon. 5 minutes won't kill you. And salted caramel brownie ice cream is non-negotiable in this apartment. He took the spoon, their fingers brushing briefly. Fine, but only because you make a compelling argument. They stood on opposite sides of her small kitchen counter, sharing ice cream straight from the container, like old friends, rather than 2 people who'd met 20 minutes ago. Madison couldn't remember the last time she'd felt this comfortable with someone new. Carter asked about her art, real questions that showed he was listening. What inspires her? How did she develop her style? What did she love most about painting? She found herself telling him things she rarely shared, the way art felt like breathing, necessary and natural. How she'd moved to Chicago 3 years ago with nothing but student loans and a portfolio, determined to make it work. How some days, like today, she wondered if she was delusional. You're not delucate, Carter said firmly. You're persistent. There's a difference. Delusional people don't create work this good. They don't keep submitting after 17 rejections. They give up. Madison felt something crack open in her chest, some tight knot of doubt loosening slightly. How do you know I won't give up at 18? Because he met her eyes, and Madison felt the full force of his attention, a spotlight warm and focused. You invited a stranger to share your emergency ice cream and talk about your dreams. That's not what giving up looks like. They held each other's gaze for a long moment, something unspoken passing between them. Madison broke first, looking down at the nearly empty ice cream container. Well, this got deep fast. Sorry. I don't usually trauma dump on my grocery carriers. Carter smiled. I don't usually carry groceries for beautiful artists. So we're both out of our comfort zones. The compliment, delivered so casually, hit Madison harder than it should have. She felt her cheeks warm again and tried to cover it with humor. Smooth line. Do you use that on all the women who mistake you for service workers? Only the ones with good taste in ice cream, he countered. His phone buzzed, and he glanced at it, his expression shifting almost imperceptibly. I really do need to go. Meeting I can't miss. Madison nodded, suddenly not wanting him to leave but unable to think of a reason to make him stay. Of course. Thank you again. For everything. Carter moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the knob. Madison. She looked up. That gallery that rejected you, don't let it define your worth. Your work deserves to be seen. Before Madison could respond, before she could ask what made him so certain, he was gone. The door clicked shut softly behind him, and Madison stood alone in her studio. 2 spoons and an empty ice cream container on the counter, wondering what had just happened. Outside her window, she heard a scooter engine start, then fade into the distance. Madison walked to her easel, looking at her painting with fresh eyes. Carter's words echoed in her mind. 3 days passed, and Madison couldn't stop thinking about the mysterious stranger who'd carried her groceries. She told herself it was ridiculous, a chance encounter with someone she'd never see again. But Carter's words about her art kept replaying in her mind, a quiet encouragement that somehow felt more genuine than all the formulaic rejection emails combined. She was working late Friday evening, brush in hand, when her phone rang. Unknown number. Madison almost let it go to voicemail, but something made her answer. "Hello, is this Madison Cole?" The voice was professional, female, unfamiliar. "Yes? This is Rebecca Martinez, from the Northlight Gallery." Madison's heart stuttered. Northlight was one of the most prestigious galleries in Chicago, known for discovering major talent. She'd never even submitted work there, convinced she wasn't ready for that league yet. "I'm calling because we'd like to schedule a viewing of your portfolio. Would you be available next Tuesday at 2? Madison nearly dropped her brush. "I'm sorry, what? How did you?" "We were referred to your work by someone whose judgment we trust, implicitly," Rebecca continued smoothly. "He showed us images of your cityscape series, and we're very interested." "He?" Madison's mind raced. The only person who'd seen her recent work was Carter. But how would a guy on a scooter have connections to Northlight Gallery? Unless... Oh, God. "Who referred me?" she asked, her voice smaller than she intended. "I'm not at liberty to say," Rebecca replied, "but he spoke very highly of your talent." "Are you available Tuesday?" "Yes," Madison managed. "Absolutely. I'll be there." "Wonderful. I'll send you an email with the details. We're looking forward to meeting you, Madison." The call ended, and Madison stood frozen in her studio, phone clutched in her hand, a dozen questions rioting through her mind. Who was Carter, really? What kind of business investments gave someone that kind of pull in the art world? And why would he do this for her? She wanted to thank him, but she had no way to contact him. No phone number, no last name, just a first name, and the memory of gray eyes that seemed to see more than she'd shown. Tuesday arrived too quickly, and not quickly enough. Madison dressed carefully, professional, but artistic, and took the train to Northlight Gallery. The building itself was intimidating, all glass and steel and minimalist elegance. Inside, Rebecca Martinez greeted her warmly, a woman in her 40s, with sharp eyes and an even sharper black suit. "Madison Cole, such a pleasure. Please, come in." The viewing went better than Madison's wildest dreams. Rebecca loved her work, understood her vision, asked insightful questions about technique and inspiration. By the end of the hour, she was discussing a group show in October, a chance for Madison to display 4 pieces alongside other emerging artists. "It's not a solo show," Rebecca clarified, "but it's an excellent opportunity. We've launched several major careers through our Emerging Artists series." Madison could barely breathe. "I don't know what to say. Thank you seems completely inadequate." "Thank your benefactor," Rebecca said with a knowing smile. "Though he made me promise not to reveal his identity. Said you'd figure it out eventually." Madison left the gallery walking on air, her mind spinning. She needed to find Carter, needed to understand what this meant. But Chicago was a city of millions, and she had nothing but a first name and a scooter. Then, as if the universe had been listening, she saw him. Friday evening, exactly 1 week after their first meeting, Madison was crossing Michigan Avenue when she spotted a familiar figure. Carter stood outside a towering office building, talking on his phone. Dressed in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than her rent. He looked every inch the powerful businessman, completely different from the casual stranger who'd carried her groceries. Madison's feet carried her forward before her brain caught up. "Carter." He turned, and his expression cycled through surprise, pleasure, and something that might have been apprehension. "Madison." His voice was warm but cautious. "How are you?" "How am I?" Madison stopped a few feet away, arms crossed. "I'm confused, actually. I got a very interesting phone call this week from Northlight Gallery." Carter had the grace to look slightly sheepish. "Did you?" "Congratulations." "Don't play dumb," Madison said, though she couldn't quite keep the smile from her voice. "You know exactly why they called. You showed them my work, didn't you?" Carter slipped his phone into his pocket, giving her his full attention. I might have mentioned that I'd seen some exceptional art that deserved a wider audience. You might have mentioned. Madison shook her head, torn between gratitude and frustration. "Who are you, Carter? And don't say you work in business investments. People in business investments don't have the personal cell numbers of gallery directors." He sighed, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked uncertain. "Can I buy you coffee? There's a cafe around the corner. We can talk." 20 minutes later, they sat in a quiet corner of an upscale coffee shop, espresso cups between them. Carter stared into his cup like it held answers. "My full name is Carter Ashford," he began. "I don't just work in business. My family owns Ashford Capital. We invest in various sectors, including arts and culture." Madison's eyes widened. Ashford Capital was massive, a name even she recognized from financial news. "You're that Ashford?" Carter nodded, looking distinctly uncomfortable. "I didn't lie to you. I just didn't mention the specifics." "Why?" Madison asked. "Why not tell me?" He met her eyes. "Because when you flagged me down on that street, you saw me as just a person. Not a name, not a fortune, not an opportunity. Just someone who could help carry groceries. Do you know how rare that is?" Madison's anger softened. Understanding dawned. "So you let me believe you were a delivery guy." "I didn't correct your assumption," Carter admitted. "And then I got to spend an hour with someone who was completely, refreshingly real, who shared ice cream and talked about dreams without calculating what I could do for her." Madison absorbed this, her emotions complicated. "I can understand that. But Carter, you can't just pull strings for people without telling them. It's not fair." "I didn't pull strings," Carter said firmly, leaning forward. "I showed Rebecca your work through legitimate channels. I sent her photos and told her about a talented artist I'd discovered. She made the decision to contact you based on the quality of your art, Madison. Not because of my name. But you wouldn't have shown her if we hadn't met," Madison pointed out. "If I hadn't mistaken you for a delivery person." Carter's lips curved into that small smile she was coming to recognize. "True. But I'd argue that was fate, not manipulation." Madison wanted to stay angry, to hold on to her indignation. But sitting across from him, seeing the genuine concern in his eyes, she found it impossible. And the anonymity? Making Rebecca promise not to tell me it was you? "Because," Carter said quietly, "I wanted you to have the opportunity without feeling obligated to me. If you knew I'd arranged it, would you have gone to the viewing? Or would you have refused out of pride?" Madison opened her mouth to protest, then closed it. He was right. She absolutely would have refused. "Damn it. You're annoyingly perceptive. It's a skill I've developed over years of business negotiations." He relaxed slightly, sensing her anger ebbing. "Plus, I have 3 sisters. I've learned to anticipate emotional reactions." 3 sisters? Madison seized on this personal detail. "Tell me more. About your real life. Carter Ashford of Ashford Capital." He smiled, something genuine and warm. "Okay. Fair trade. I'll tell you about me if you tell me why you really came to Chicago. Deal?" Madison extended her hand across the table. They shook, his hand warm and solid around hers, lingering a moment longer than necessary. Carter told her about growing up in Connecticut, the pressure of a family legacy, how he'd been groomed from childhood to take over the company, how he loved the work, but sometimes missed having the freedom to just be himself, how his sisters were all successful in their own right, doctor, lawyer, environmental scientist, and how they teased him mercilessly about being the boring businessman of the family. "I'm not boring," he protested, and Madison laughed. "You carried groceries for a stranger and secretly got her a gallery showing. Definitely not boring." "Your turn." Madison told him about growing up in a small town in Wisconsin, where her artistic ambitions were met with concerned looks and suggestions to study something practical. How she'd worked 3 jobs to save money for Chicago. How her parents still called once a week, hoping she'd come to her senses and go to dental school. Dental school? Carter looked amused. You'd be the most overqualified dentist in history. Right? Madison grinned. But they mean well. They just don't understand that making art isn't a phase or a hobby. It's who I am. Carter nodded, his expression serious. I get that. More than you might think. They talked for 2 hours, conversation flowing easily from topic to topic. Madison learned that Carter was 32, 3 years older than her, that he played piano, poorly by his own admission, that he had a weakness for bad action movies and good sushi, that despite his wealth and success, he sometimes felt trapped by expectations. I'm supposed to marry someone appropriate, Carter said with barely concealed frustration. From the right family, with the right connections. My mother has introduced me to approximately 700 suitable candidates. Madison's heart sank a little at the mention of suitable candidates. And have any of them been suitable? Not one, Carter said, his eyes locked on hers. They all wanted the name, the money, the lifestyle. None of them wanted to know who I actually am. The weight of his gaze made Madison's breath catch. She recognized what was building between them, this connection that had started with mistaken identity and was becoming something far more real. But the gulf between their worlds felt impossibly wide. Carter must have seen something in her expression, because he reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. Madison. What you're thinking right now, whatever doubts or concerns, I can see them. Talk to me. She took a breath. We're from completely different worlds, Carter. You own companies. I can barely afford my rent. Your mother wants you to marry someone suitable, and I'm pretty sure a struggling artist with 17 gallery rejections doesn't fit that description. Carter's fingers closed around hers, firm and sure. First, you only have 16 rejections now. Northlight makes 17 into 16. Madison couldn't help but smile. Second, he continued, I don't care about suitable. I care about real. And you, Madison Cole, are the most real person I've met in years. But your family, Madison started, will have opinions. Carter acknowledged. They always do. But they don't get to decide how I live my life or who matters to me. And you matter. Madison's heart hammered. We barely know each other. Then let's change that, Carter said simply. Have dinner with me. A real date, not chance encounter. Let me take you somewhere nice, and we can continue getting to know each other. Madison knew she should be cautious. This was Carter Ashford, heir to a fortune, living in a stratosphere she couldn't even imagine. But she also remembered how he'd looked at her painting, really seen it. How he'd shared ice cream in her tiny kitchen without a trace of judgment. How he'd believed in her work enough to risk his reputation by recommending her. Okay, she said softly. One dinner. Carter's face lit up, transforming him from powerful businessman to someone younger, more open. Saturday night. I'll pick you up at 7. "Where are you taking me?" Madison asked. "Somewhere you can wear the fancy dress I suspect you don't own yet," Carter teased. "So first we're going shopping." "Absolutely not," Madison said firmly. "I'm not letting you buy me clothes." Carter raised his hands in surrender. "Fair enough. Somewhere you can wear whatever makes you feel beautiful. How about that?" "Better," Madison agreed, though her stomach fluttered with nerves. What had she just agreed to? As they left the coffee shop, Carter walked her to the train station. At the entrance, he paused, turning to face her. "Madison, I know this is complicated, but I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since that afternoon. The way you laughed about your terrible day. The passion in your eyes when you talked about your art. I don't want to let this go." "I don't either," Madison admitted. "Saturday night, 7 o'clock. Don't be late." "I'm never late," Carter promised. "And Madison, thank you for giving this a chance." Saturday arrived with Madison's nerves in full rebellion. She stood in front of her closet, which was decidedly lacking in anything appropriate for a date with a millionaire. Her sister Claire had FaceTimed earlier, screaming with excitement and demanding every detail. "You're going out with Carter Ashford?" Claire had shrieked. "Madison, do you have any idea who he is? The family practically owns half of Connecticut." "That's helpful, Claire." "Really calming my nerves," Madison had replied sarcastically. Sorry. Claire had composed herself. "But seriously, Mads, be yourself. If he wanted someone impressed by money, he wouldn't have asked you." Now, Madison pulled out a simple navy dress, the nicest thing she owned. It would have to do. She kept her makeup natural, her hair in loose waves, and slipped on the one pair of heels that didn't make her want to cry after an hour. At precisely 7 o'clock, her buzzer rang. Madison took a deep breath and went downstairs. Carter stood on the sidewalk beside a sleek black car, and Madison's breath caught. He wore dark slacks and a crisp white shirt, jacket slung over his arm, looking effortlessly elegant. When he saw her, his face softened into a smile. "You look beautiful." "You clean up pretty well yourself," Madison managed, suddenly shy. The restaurant was called Aurélie, a French place in Gold Coast that Madison had only read about in reviews, the kind of place where reservations required months of advance notice. Inside, soft lighting glowed against cream walls, fresh flowers adorned every table, and the quiet murmur of conversation created an intimate atmosphere. Carter had reserved a corner table, private and perfect. As they settled in, Madison felt hyper-aware of everything: the weight of the linen napkin, the crystal stemware, the hovering attentive staff. "You okay?" Carter asked gently. "Honestly," Madison admitted, a little overwhelmed. "This is beautiful, but it's not exactly my usual Friday night." "What's your usual Friday night? Leftover Thai food, painting until midnight, maybe streaming a documentary about art forgers?" Carter grinned. "That actually sounds perfect. Want to skip dessert here and do that instead?" Madison laughed, tension breaking. "No, I'm good. Besides, I'm curious what a $15 appetizer tastes like." They ordered, Carter patiently explaining the menu when Madison looked confused by the French descriptions. He didn't make her feel stupid for not knowing, just shared information naturally. The food, when it arrived, was extraordinary. Over dinner, they fell into the same easy conversation they'd had at the coffee shop. Carter asked about her creative process, and Madison found herself describing how a painting evolved, from initial concept to final brushstroke. He listened with complete attention, asking questions that showed he genuinely cared about understanding. "Your turn," Madison said. "Tell me what you actually do all day. Run numbers and make rich people richer?" Carter smiled. "Sometimes. But we also invest in startups, community development projects, arts programs. My favorite part is finding businesses or artists who need support and watching them succeed. Like using your powers for good, Madison teased. Something like that, he agreed. Though it's not always popular with the board. They think I'm too sentimental about the arts portfolio. His phone buzzed. Carter glanced at it, and his expression tightened almost imperceptibly. Problem? Madison asked. My mother, he said carefully. She's heard I'm having dinner with someone and wants details. Already? How does she even know? Carter looked uncomfortable. My mother has sources everywhere. It's both impressive and terrifying. Madison felt a chill of reality. So she knows about me? She knows I'm at dinner. Not who you are yet, though she's probably investigating as we speak. Madison. He reached across the table, taking her hand. I need you to know something. My family will have opinions. They always do. But those opinions don't change what I want. And what do you want? Madison asked quietly, her heart racing. You, Carter said simply. I want to see where this goes. I want more dinners, more conversations. I want to show you my favorite places in the city and learn all your secrets. I want this to be real. The intensity in his eyes made Madison's breath catch. She wanted to believe it could work, that the distance between their worlds could be bridged, but doubt whispered in the back of her mind. After dinner, Carter drove her home. They sat in the car outside her building, neither quite ready to say goodnight. Thank you for tonight, Madison said softly. It was wonderful, even if I'm still slightly intimidated by the salad having 3 forks. Carter laughed. Next time, we'll go somewhere with only 1 fork, maybe that Thai place you mentioned. Madison smiled. You'd really want to eat leftover pad Thai in my studio? Absolutely, Carter said. In fact, he checked his watch. It's only 9:30. Want some company for those Art Forger documentaries? Madison knew inviting him up was crossing a line, moving from careful first date into something more significant. But she also knew she didn't want the night to end. Okay, she said. But I'm warning you, my studio is tiny, and my couch is from a garage sale. Perfect, Carter said, already unbuckling his seatbelt. Upstairs, Madison felt nervous in a different way as Carter settled onto her threadbare couch. He'd shed his jacket, rolled up his sleeves, looking completely at ease in her modest space. She made tea. They queued up a documentary, and somehow ended up sitting close together, Carter's arm draped across the back of the couch. Halfway through the film, Madison realized she wasn't watching anymore. She was hyper-aware of Carter beside her, the warmth of his presence, the subtle scent of his cologne, the way his fingers occasionally brushed her shoulder. Carter, she said softly. He turned to face her. Yeah, I'm really glad I mistook you for a delivery guy. He smiled, that genuine, warm expression that transformed his entire face. Best case of mistaken identity ever. Then he leaned in, giving her time to pull away. But Madison didn't. She met him halfway, and when their lips touched, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. The kiss started gentle, tentative, then deepened as Madison's hand found the back of his neck and Carter pulled her closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing harder, Carter rested his forehead against hers. I've wanted to do that since the ice cream, he admitted. Me too, Madison whispered. They spent the rest of the evening curled together on her garage sale couch, sometimes talking, sometimes kissing, sometimes just existing in comfortable silence. The next few weeks felt like living in a dream Madison was afraid to wake from. Carter somehow balanced his demanding schedule with spending time with her. Lunches when he could escape his office, dinners at hole-in-the-wall restaurants Madison loved, quiet evenings in her studio where he worked on his laptop while she painted. He never made her feel less than for her modest lifestyle. If anything, he seemed to relish the simplicity of their time together. No pretense, no expectations, just them. But reality had a way of intruding. It started with a text from an unknown number containing a link to a gossip website. Madison's stomach dropped as she clicked through. The headline screamed, "Carter Ashford. Spotted with mystery woman." Below were photos of them leaving O'Reilly, walking through Millennium Park, Carter's arm around her shoulders. The article speculated about her identity, calling her an unknown companion and wondering if the eligible bachelor was finally settling down. Madison's phone rang immediately. "Claire." "Have you seen it?" her sister asked without preamble. "Just now," Madison said weakly. "Oh God, they're calling me his mystery woman, like I'm some kind of secret." "Well," Claire said pragmatically, "you kind of are. How many people know you're dating?" "Just you," Madison admitted. "We haven't really talked about going public or what this is officially." "Maybe you should," Claire suggested gently, "before his family finds out from page 6. Carter called an hour later. "Madison, I'm so sorry. I didn't think they'd find out this quickly." "It's fine," Madison lied. "It's just a little overwhelming." "I want to see you," Carter said. "Can I come over tonight?" They need to talk, Madison knew, about what this relationship meant, about how to navigate the impossible distance between their worlds. When Carter arrived, he looked tired, stressed in a way she hadn't seen before. "My mother called," he said, without preamble. "She saw the photos. And?" Madison's heart pounded. "She wants to meet you." The words hung between them. Madison sat down heavily on her couch. "Carter, I don't know if I'm ready for that." "Your mother wanting to meet the mystery woman sounds less like casual interest and more like an interrogation." "It might be a little bit of both," Carter admitted, sitting beside her. "But Madison, I'm not hiding you. I don't want this to be a secret. I want my family to know you, to see what I see." "Which is what?" Madison asked quietly. "Someone extraordinary," Carter said firmly. "Someone talented and passionate and real. Someone who makes me want to be honest about who I am, not just what I'm expected to be." Madison felt tears prick her eyes. "That's beautiful. But your mother is expecting someone suitable, remember? Someone from the right family with the right connections. I'm an artist who eats ramen 3 times a week and paints in a studio the size of your bathroom." Carter took her hands, his grip warm and steady. "Then we'll show her that suitable is subjective, that what I need isn't another society connection. It's someone who understands me, who challenges me, who makes me laugh over leftover Thai food and bad documentaries." Madison wanted to believe him, but the doubt wouldn't quite leave. What if she's right, though? What if we're too different? "Then we'll figure it out together," Carter said. "But I won't let fear decide this for us. Will you meet her? Please." Madison took a deep breath, thinking of all the reasons to say no, to protect herself from inevitable disappointment. But when she looked at Carter, saw the hope and vulnerability in his eyes, she couldn't. "Okay," she said. "I'll meet your mother." The meeting was scheduled for the following Saturday at the Ashford family's Chicago penthouse. Madison spent the week in a state of controlled panic, trying on every outfit she owned and hating them all. Finally, Claire sent her money with strict instructions to buy something appropriate that makes you feel confident, not like you're wearing a costume. Madison found a simple but elegant dress in slate blue, paired it with modest heels and minimal jewelry. When she looked in the mirror, she saw someone who looked put together, but still recognizably herself. Carter picked her up, and in the car he squeezed her hand. "Just be yourself. That's all I want her to see." "Easy for you to say," Madison muttered. "You didn't grow up in a Wisconsin town of 3,000 people. The penthouse was everything Madison expected, and more. Floor-to-ceiling windows with panoramic city views, museum-quality art on the walls, furniture that belonged in architectural magazines. Carter's mother, Vivian Ashford, waited in the living room, a woman in her early 60s who radiated the kind of elegance money couldn't buy. Sharp blue eyes assessed Madison in a single sweep. "Miss Cole," Vivian said, her voice cool but not unkind. "How nice to finally meet the woman who has captured my son's attention." "The pleasure is mine, Mrs. Ashford," Madison managed, grateful her voice didn't shake. They sat for tea, an absurdly formal ritual that felt like a performance. Vivian asked questions, polite on the surface, but clearly calculated to assess Madison's suitability. Where did she study? What did her family do? What were her career prospects? Madison answered honestly, refusing to embellish or apologize for her background. She saw Carter tense beside her, ready to intervene. But she subtly shook her head. She could handle this. "You're an artist," Vivian said, making it sound like an affliction. "That must be quite financially challenging." "It has its difficulties," Madison agreed. "But I'm building a career. I have a showing coming up at Northlight Gallery in October." Vivian's eyebrow rose fractionally. "Northlight? That's quite prestigious for someone so early in their career." Madison felt the implication, the unspoken suggestion that Carter had pulled strings. "Actually," Madison said carefully, "I was referred by someone who believed in my work. The gallery director made the decision based on the quality of my portfolio, not on connections, which is how it should be in the art world. Merit over nepotism." The room went silent. Carter looked like he was trying not to smile. Vivian studied Madison with new interest. "You're quite forthright, Miss Cole." "I appreciate that," Madison replied. "Life's too short for anything else, don't you think?" The faintest smile touched Vivian's lips. "Perhaps you're right." The tea continued, and while Vivian didn't become warm exactly, the ice thawed incrementally. She asked about Madison's artistic influences and seemed genuinely interested in the answers. When Madison mentioned growing up in Wisconsin, Vivian surprised her by sharing that she'd grown up in rural Vermont. "Before I married Carter's father, I wasn't from money either," Vivian said. "I was a high school English teacher from a town smaller than yours." Madison blinked. "Really?" Vivian's expression softened microscopically. "Really? So I understand more than you might think about navigating worlds that don't quite fit. But I also understand how difficult it can be. The scrutiny, the judgment, the constant feeling of not being enough. Is that why you're warning me off?" Madison asked directly. Vivian set down her teacup with deliberate care. "I'm not warning you off, Miss Cole. I'm asking if you're prepared for what a relationship with my son entails. The media attention, the social obligations, the family expectations. It's not an easy life." Madison glanced at Carter, who was watching her with an expression that made her heart ache. "Is any relationship easy?" she asked. "I imagine even without the money and the name, love is complicated. People find ways to make it work when they want to." "They do," Vivian agreed. "But wanting isn't always enough. You need strength, resilience, and a very clear sense of who you are. Otherwise, you'll lose yourself trying to become what everyone else expects." "I know who I am," Madison said quietly. "I'm an artist who believes in my work. I'm someone who doesn't apologize for working 3 jobs to chase a dream. And I'm someone who sees Carter not as Carter Ashford of Ashford Capital, but as the man who carried my groceries and shared my emergency ice cream and looked at my paintings like they mattered." Vivian was silent for a long moment. Then she stood, smoothing her skirt. "Carter, would you give Miss Cole and me a few minutes alone?" Carter looked torn, but Madison nodded. "It's okay." After he left, Vivian walked to the window, gazing out at the city sprawling below. When she spoke, her voice was quieter, less formal. "My son has had many women interested in him over the years. Models, socialites, daughters of business partners. All perfectly suitable on paper. Do you know what I saw in every single one? Madison shook her head. Calculation, Vivian said. They looked at him and saw opportunity, security, status. Not one of them ever saw him. Madison's throat tightened. But you, Vivian continued, turning to face her, you didn't even know who he was when you asked him to carry your groceries. You treated him like a person, not a prize. And when you look at him, I see something I haven't seen directed at my son before. Genuine affection that has nothing to do with his last name. I love him, Madison said, the words escaping before she could stop them. It surprised her how easily they came, how true they felt. I didn't plan to. I tried to convince myself it was too complicated. But I do. I love who he is when we're eating takeout in my tiny studio. I love how he listens when I talk about art. I love that he's brilliant and successful, but never makes me feel small for having less. Vivian's expression shifted, something warming in those sharp blue eyes. That's what I needed to hear. Not pretty words about suitable marriages or strategic alliances. Just honesty. She returned to her seat. I won't lie to you, Miss Cole. This won't be easy. There will be people who judge you, who assume you're with Carter for his money. There will be social events where you feel out of place. The media will scrutinize your every move. But if you truly love my son, and if he loves you, then those obstacles become bearable. Madison met her gaze steadily. Are you giving us your blessing? I'm saying, Vivian replied, that I'd rather see my son happy with someone genuine than miserable with someone suitable. The rest, you'll have to navigate together. When Carter returned, his eyes immediately sought Madison's, checking if she was okay. She smiled, and he relaxed visibly. Your mother and I have reached an understanding, Madison said. Vivian stood. Carter, you chose well. Don't let this one go. Then, in a gesture that shocked both of them, she kissed Madison's cheek. Welcome to the family, Miss Cole. Do try to keep my son humble. After they left, in the elevator down, Carter pulled Madison into his arms. What did she say to you? That I need strength and resilience, that it won't be easy, that people will judge me. Madison wrapped her arms around his waist, breathing in his familiar scent, but also that if we love each other, we can handle it. Carter cupped her face in his hands. I do love you, Madison Cole. I think I started falling that first afternoon when you offered me $20 in ice cream. I love you too, Madison whispered, even though you're ridiculously rich, and I still sometimes can't believe this is real. It's real, Carter promised. All of it. That night, they returned to Madison's studio, their sanctuary. They ordered Thai food, curled up on the garage sale couch, and talked until late about everything Vivian had said, about what came next, about navigating this new chapter together. We should probably talk about the media thing, Carter said carefully. The photos will continue. People will want to know who you are. Madison had been thinking about this. I don't want to hide, but I also don't want to be defined as just your girlfriend. I'm an artist first. What if we're selective? Carter suggested. Choose one interview. Set the record straight on our own terms, then maintain privacy. We control the narrative instead of letting it control us. Madison considered this. That could work, as long as I get to be Madison Cole, artist, who also happens to be dating you. Not just the mystery woman. Deal, Carter agreed. They sealed it with a kiss that quickly deepened into something more, and for the rest of the night, the outside world ceased to exist. There was only them, two people from impossibly different backgrounds who'd found something real in the chaos. Madison fell asleep in Carter's arms, feeling for the first time like maybe, just maybe, they could actually make this work. The October evening of Madison's gallery showing arrived with perfect autumn crispness. She stood in Northlight Gallery surrounded by her work. 4 paintings she'd poured her heart into, and felt surreal waves of achievement and terror. People actually came. Not just Carter and her sister, but legitimate collectors, other artists, critics. Rebecca Martinez moved through the crowd making introductions, and Madison tried to remember to breathe. "You're doing great," Carter whispered, appearing at her elbow with champagne. "Stop looking like you're about to bolt." "I'm not going to bolt," Madison protested. "I'm just experiencing mild existential panic. Completely normal." He smiled, squeezing her hand discreetly. "Your work is brilliant. They can see that." Just then, a silver-haired woman in an impeccable suit approached. "Miss Cole? I'm Diane Hartford, from the Hartford Collection. Your Cityscape series is extraordinary. We'd like to discuss a purchase." Madison's brain briefly short-circuited. Carter, sensing this, smoothly intervened. "Ms. Hartford, wonderful to see you. Perhaps you could give Madison your card. I'm sure Rebecca can facilitate a conversation next week when things are less hectic." Diane smiled knowingly, handed over her card, and drifted away. Madison stared at the card like it might disappear. Did that really just happen? Carter's grin was proud. That really just happened. Welcome to the art world, Madison Cole. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. 3 more potential buyers, a reviewer from a major publication, and countless conversations about technique and inspiration. When the crowd finally thinned, Madison found herself standing before her largest painting, the one that had started everything, the cityscape Carter had first seen in her studio. It looked different here, professional lighting making the colors glow, the official gallery setting lending it legitimacy she'd never quite believed it deserved. "You changed my life," Carter said quietly, coming to stand beside her. Madison turned to him, surprised. "I think it's the other way around. You got me this showing." "No," Carter shook his head. "You changed how I see the world. Before I met you, everything was transactions and obligations. You reminded me that there's beauty and passion and authenticity. You made me want more than just suitable." Madison felt tears prick her eyes. She'd spent so much energy worrying about whether she fit into his world that she hadn't realized how much he'd grown to fit into hers. "I love you," she said, not caring who might overhear. Carter's face softened. "I love you too." Rebecca approached, beaming. "Madison, phenomenal night. We've had serious interest in all 4 pieces, and there's talk of a solo show next spring. Are you interested?" Madison's heart soared. "Absolutely." "Wonderful. We'll schedule a meeting next week to discuss details." Rebecca moved on, and Madison turned to Carter, laughing with pure joy. "Did she just say solo show?" "She absolutely did," Carter confirmed. "I told you, your work deserves to be seen." They celebrated that night at Madison's favorite dive bar, just the 2 of them, cheap beer and greasy appetizers, far from the champagne and gallery elegance. "This is perfect," Madison said, stealing one of Carter's fries. Art world success, followed by the finest chicken wings in Chicago. "Balance," Carter agreed, kissing her temple. "Always balance." The next morning, Madison's phone exploded with messages. The review had posted online overnight, glowing praise for her technical skill and emotional depth. 3 different collectors had contacted Rebecca about purchases. Her inbox overflowed with congratulations. She lay in bed, Carter still asleep beside her, and let herself feel it. Pride, accomplishment, the validation she'd chased for years. But more than that, gratitude for the strange twist of fate that had brought her here. All because her car broke down and she'd mistaken a millionaire for a delivery guy. Carter stirred, pulling her closer. "Morning," he mumbled, voice rough with sleep. Madison settled against his chest. "I'm having a solo show." I heard." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "Told you so." "You're annoyingly right sometimes," Madison teased. Carter cracked one eye open. "Only sometimes." She laughed, kissing him properly. Over the following weeks, Madison's life transformed. The paintings sold, 3 of 4 going to serious collectors who promised to loan them for exhibitions. The 4th, the cityscape. Carter quietly purchased himself. "That's mine," he said firmly. "That painting changed my life. It stays with us." Madison didn't argue. She was already working on new pieces for the solo show, her confidence growing with each brushstroke. Carter continued to balance his demanding schedule with being present in her life. He never made her feel like an obligation or distraction. Instead, he seemed to draw energy from their time together, returning to his office refreshed after evenings in her studio. They navigated their first public appearance together at a charity gala in November. Madison wore a borrowed dress, courtesy of Claire's fashion connections, and held Carter's arm as cameras flashed. The media had been curious but mostly respectful after their carefully crafted interview, where Madison made clear she was an artist first, Carter's girlfriend second. Still, the attention was overwhelming. "How do you do this all the time?" Madison whispered as they smiled for the 50th photo. "Practice," Carter murmured back, "and knowing I get to go home with you at the end." Inside the gala, they mingled with Chicago's elite. Some were genuinely kind, interested in Madison's art and career. Others were clearly skeptical, whispered conversations following them across the ballroom. Madison held her head high, remembering Vivian's words about strength and resilience. At one point, a woman dripping in diamonds and condescension cornered Madison by the champagne fountain. "So you're the artist everyone's talking about. Must be quite the fairy tale, landing Carter Ashford." "Actually," Madison replied evenly, "I landed a gallery showing on merit. Carter was a bonus." The woman's smile was ice. "How long do you think this will last? When he gets bored of playing patron to your little hobby?" "My art isn't a hobby," Madison said, voice steel wrapped in silk. "It's my life's work. And Carter doesn't play at anything. He invests in what he believes in, including me." She walked away before the woman could respond, finding Carter across the room. He read her expression instantly. "Problem?" "Just someone who needed to be reminded that I belong here as much as she does," Madison said. Carter's eyes darkened. "Who?" "It doesn't matter," Madison said, meaning it. "I handled it." Winter arrived, blanketing Chicago in snow and transforming the city into something magical. Madison's solo show was scheduled for March, and she was deep in creation mode, sometimes painting until dawn. Carter would find her asleep on her studio floor, brushes still in hand, and carry her to bed. "You need to take care of yourself," he'd scold gently. "The art world needs you functional." "The art world can wait," Madison would mumble. But she'd let him pull her into his arms, finding rest she couldn't achieve alone. December brought unexpected challenges. Ashford Capital faced a major crisis when one of their largest investments collapsed spectacularly, taking millions in value with it. Carter worked around the clock, his stress palpable even when he tried to hide it. Madison saw less of him that week, just brief texts and one exhausted phone call at 2 in the morning. "I'm sorry," Carter had said, his voice ragged. "I'm drowning here." "Tell me what you need," Madison had replied. "Do you need me there? Space? Coffee delivery?" Just his soft laugh had made her chest ache, just knowing you're there when this is over. "I'll be here," she'd promised. The crisis resolved, barely, but it left Carter shaken in a way Madison hadn't seen before. When he finally appeared at her door 3 days later, he looked hollowed out. Madison pulled him inside without a word, led him to her bed, and simply held him while he slept for 14 hours straight. When he woke, she had soup waiting and no questions. "You didn't have to do this," Carter said, but his eyes were grateful. "That's what love is," Madison replied. "Being there for the hard stuff, not just the champagne and gallery openings." Carter pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. "I don't deserve you." "You absolutely do," Madison said firmly. "You've been my biggest champion. Let me return the favor." They spent the rest of the day in her studio, Carter on the couch with his laptop handling gentler work, Madison at her easel. The quiet companionship felt more intimate than grand gestures, more real than any gala. That's when Madison knew with absolute certainty that this was forever. Christmas came, and Madison spent it torn between Wisconsin and Chicago. Carter had invited her to Connecticut to meet his extended family, but she'd already promised her parents she'd come home. In the end, they compromised. Madison spent Christmas Eve through Christmas with her family, then drove to Connecticut on the 26th. Her mother had been cautiously supportive when Madison had told her about Carter. "I just want you to be happy, honey, but don't lose yourself trying to fit into his world." "I won't, Mom," Madison had promised. "He doesn't want me to change. He wants me exactly as I am." Meeting Carter's extended family was as intimidating as she'd feared. Aunts and uncles and cousins, all polished and accomplished, gathering in the massive Ashford estate. But Carter never left her side, his hand a constant reassurance at the small of her back. His sisters adopted her immediately, Emily introducing her around with protective enthusiasm. "This is Madison. She's brilliant. And Dad, her art is extraordinary. You should see the cityscape Carter bought." Carter's father, Richard Ashford, was harder to read. Stern and imposing. He watched Madison with assessing eyes throughout dinner, but later he pulled her aside into his study, a wood-paneled room that smelled of old books and leather. "Miss Cole, my son tells me you're an artist." "Yes, sir," Madison replied, keeping her voice steady. "I have a solo show scheduled for March at Northlight Gallery." He nodded, moving to a painting on the wall. "Do you know this piece?" Madison's breath caught. It was a minor Monet, beautiful and clearly authentic. "I do. It's lovely." "My late wife's favorite," Richard said, his voice softening almost imperceptibly. She believed art was the soul made visible, that artists had a responsibility to show truth, not just beauty. Madison felt her nervousness ease slightly. "I agree. Art should make people feel something, should challenge them to see differently." Richard turned to face her fully. "My son has been many things, successful, driven, dutiful. But I haven't seen him happy until you. That matters more than pedigree or connections. Don't let anyone make you feel less than for choosing passion over practicality." The unexpected blessing made Madison's eyes burn. "Thank you, sir. That means more than you know." "Take care of him," Richard said, "and let him take care of you. That's what partnership is." New Year's Eve found them back in Chicago, just the two of them. They skipped the society parties and exclusive events, instead bundling up and walking to the lakefront. The city glowed with lights, fireworks scheduled for midnight. "We've had quite the year," Carter said as they stood watching the dark water. "You tackled my groceries. I invaded your studio. We somehow convinced both our families. We're not completely crazy." Madison laughed, leaning into his warmth. "Best year of my life." "Mine too," Carter said. "And I want next year to be even better." "Madison," he turned to face her, his expression serious in the dim light. "I know we haven't been together that long by conventional standards, but I've never been more certain of anything. You're my partner, my best friend, the person I want beside me for everything." "Where are you going with this?" Madison asked, her heart starting to race. Carter reached into his coat pocket, and Madison's breath stopped. "I'm going somewhere that might be slightly premature, but feels absolutely right." He opened a small velvet box, revealing a ring that caught the ambient light. Simple, elegant, perfect. "Marry me, Madison. Not because it's expected or suitable, but because I can't imagine my life without you in it. Because you make me better. Because when I think about the future, every single version includes you." Madison's hands flew to her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Yes," she managed. "God, yes." Carter's face broke into the widest smile she'd ever seen. He slid the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. Then he kissed her as the first fireworks erupted overhead, golden sparks raining down on the city. They walked home through snowy streets, Madison unable to stop looking at her ring, Carter unable to stop looking at her. In her studio, they celebrated privately, and Madison thought about the impossible journey that had brought them here. A broken-down car, a case of mistaken identity, and courage to choose love over fear. "I can't wait to marry you," she whispered, as they lay tangled together. "The sooner the better," Carter agreed. "Though my mother will want to plan something elaborate." Madison groaned. "Please tell me I don't have to wear a massive dress and invite 500 people." Carter laughed. "We'll compromise. Something meaningful to us, but with enough tradition to keep the families happy." "Deal," Madison said. January and February flew by in a whirlwind of wedding planning, and Madison's final preparations for her solo show. The two events, scheduled just weeks apart, kept both of them busy enough that they sometimes passed each other with coffee and quick kisses, promises to actually talk later. But even in the chaos, Madison felt grounded. She'd found her person, her partner in every sense, and that certainty carried her through the stress. The solo show opened on a Friday night in early March. Springtime Perspectives, Rebecca had titled it. 12 paintings, showcasing Madison's evolution as an artist. The gallery was packed, even more crowded than her first showing. Carter stood beside her, proud and supportive, while collectors and critics examined her work. This is it, Madison thought, watching a woman in Prada study one of her pieces with genuine appreciation. This is what I've been working toward my entire life. By the end of the evening, 9 of 12 paintings had sold, with serious interest in the remaining 3. Reviews were glowing. Madison Cole was being called a rising star, a talent to watch, an artist with a unique vision. Claire flew in from Wisconsin to celebrate, screaming and hugging Madison so hard her ribs hurt. "You did it," Claire sobbed happily. "You actually did it." "We did it," Madison corrected, including Carter in her gaze. "All of us together." The wedding was set for late April, a compromise between Vivian's desire for a traditional affair and Madison's preference for intimacy. They settled on a garden ceremony at the Connecticut estate, limited to 150 guests, mostly family and close friends. Madison designed her own dress, simple ivory silk with hand-embroidered details, working with a seamstress Claire recommended. When she finally tried on the finished product, even she had to admit it was perfect. "You look like a painting," Carter breathed when she showed him a photo, carefully angling it so he couldn't see too much before the actual day. The weeks leading up to the wedding were chaotic but joyful. Madison moved some of her things into Carter's Chicago penthouse, keeping her studio as a workspace. She'd never give up that small sanctuary, the place where everything had started, but creating a home with Carter felt right. The night before the wedding, they honored the tradition of sleeping apart. Madison stayed in the guest house with Claire and Emily, drinking champagne and laughing about the journey that had brought her here. "Remember when you called me screaming about the delivery guy?" Claire teased. "I thought you were losing it." "I was losing it," Madison laughed, "but in the best possible way." Emily raised her glass. To mistaken identities and perfect accidents. To love that defies expectations, Madison added. They drank, and Madison felt overwhelming gratitude for these women, for the family she'd found, for the future waiting just hours away. The wedding day dawned clear and beautiful. April sunshine warming the gardens, where rows of white chairs faced an arbor covered in climbing roses. Madison's parents arrived looking slightly overwhelmed by the grandeur, but her father hugged her tight and whispered, "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. Not for marrying rich, but for staying exactly who you are." That gave her the courage she needed. Carter waited at the altar in a perfectly tailored suit, his sisters standing as groomswomen while Claire served as Madison's maid of honor. When Madison appeared, walking down the aisle with her father, she saw Carter's face transform, emotion making his eyes bright. He mouthed, "You're beautiful," and Madison smiled, tears threatening her carefully applied makeup. The ceremony was simple but meaningful. They'd written their own vows, promises that reflected their unique journey. "I promise," Carter said, his voice steady and sure, "to always see you for who you are, not what the world expects you to be. To support your dreams as fiercely as you've supported mine. To share ice cream and leftovers and every moment in between. To choose you every single day for the rest of my life." Madison's voice shook slightly but held strong. "I promise to stay true to myself and to us. To navigate the hard parts with the same courage we've shown already. To remind you that suitable is overrated and real is everything. To paint the world we build together with all the colors I know. To love you not despite our differences, but because of them." When the officiant pronounced them married, Carter kissed her like they were the only two people in existence, and the assembled guests erupted in applause. The reception was elegant, but warm. Dancing and toasts that made everyone laugh and cry. Vivian publicly welcomed Madison to the family, her speech surprisingly emotional. "I didn't know what my son needed," she admitted, "but Madison did. And for that, I'm forever grateful." Richard toasted their partnership, and Madison's mother shared embarrassing childhood stories that made Carter laugh until his sides hurt. When they finally had their first dance, swaying to a song they'd chosen together, Madison rested her head on Carter's shoulder. "Best decision I ever made," she murmured, "asking a stranger to carry my groceries." "Best decision I ever made was saying yes," Carter replied. "And every decision after that led us here." They danced until late into the night, surrounded by everyone they loved, the garden lights twinkling like stars. When it was finally time to leave for their honeymoon, a week in Italy touring art museums and vineyards, Madison paused at the door to look back. A year ago, she'd been struggling to pay rent, getting rejection after rejection, feeling like her dreams might never materialize. Now she was a recognized artist with a sold-out show and a spring schedule full of commissions. She was married to a man who loved her unconditionally, who'd seen her potential before she fully believed in it herself. She'd found family in unexpected places and learned that worlds that seemed impossibly far apart could merge when two people were willing to bridge the gap. Carter took her hand, squeezing gently. "Ready, Mrs. Ashford?" Madison smiled, the name still strange and wonderful. "Ready." They drove away toward whatever came next, together. Italy was everything Madison had dreamed, and more. They spent lazy days wandering through the Uffizi Gallery in Florence, standing breathless before Botticelli's Birth of Venus, and Madison filled sketchbook after sketchbook with ideas inspired by Renaissance masters. Carter surprised her with his knowledge of art history, engaging in passionate discussions about technique and symbolism as they strolled through the Sistine Chapel. "You're full of surprises," Madison said as they shared gelato in a tiny piazza in Rome. "Art history minor in college," Carter admitted. "My father thought it was frivolous, but my mother encouraged it. Said a well-rounded education included beauty as well as business." "I love that about her," Madison said. "For all her initial concerns, she really does understand." "She does," Carter agreed. "She just wanted to be sure you were strong enough for this life, and I think you've proven that beyond doubt." Their honeymoon was blissfully free from the real world. No business calls for Carter, no gallery obligations for Madison. Just two people discovering Italy and each other in new ways. But reality waited, and when they returned to Chicago in early May, it came rushing back. Madison's career was exploding. Requests for commissions flooded in. 3 different galleries wanted to represent her, and a major collector in New York had purchased 2 pieces and wanted to discuss a patronage arrangement. It was everything she'd worked for, but the sudden attention was overwhelming. "I don't know how to handle all of this," she confessed to Carter one evening as they reviewed contracts at his dining table, which had become their makeshift office. "Rebecca says I need a manager, but that feels so official and intimidating." "You need support," Carter corrected gently. "Someone to handle the business side so you can focus on creating. That's not intimidating. That's smart." He had a point. Madison hired a manager, a sharp woman named Lena, who immediately took control of the chaos, negotiating better rates and scheduling Madison's commitments in a way that didn't leave her completely exhausted. Meanwhile, Carter faced his own challenges. The fallout from December's investment crisis meant rebuilding trust with shareholders and clients. He worked long hours, sometimes not coming home until after midnight, and Madison could see the stress wearing on him. They made a pact. 1 night a week, no work, no obligations. Just them. Reconnecting over takeout or quiet evenings in Madison's studio. Those nights became sacred. The anchor that kept them grounded as their professional lives spiraled into increasing demands. By summer, they'd found a rhythm. Madison worked primarily from her studio, which Carter had helped her expand into the adjacent unit when it became available. She could spread out now, work on multiple pieces simultaneously, even host small workshops for aspiring artists, something that brought her unexpected joy. Carter balanced his office demands with being present for the moments that mattered. He never missed one of Madison's showings or important meetings, just as she made sure to attend the charity galas and business dinners, where her presence mattered to him. They were building a partnership, real and tested. That proved their different worlds could not just coexist, but enhance each other. In August, Madison discovered she was pregnant. The news came as a complete surprise. They hadn't been trying, though they hadn't been preventing either, and Madison stared at the positive test for a full 10 minutes before she could process it. Carter arrived home to find her sitting on their bathroom floor, test in hand, tears streaming down her face. "Madison?" "What?" he started, then saw the test, and his eyes went wide. "Is that? Are you? We're pregnant," Madison confirmed, laughing through her tears. "I'm terrified and excited, and I don't know how I'm going to paint with a baby. And what if I'm terrible at this?" Carter dropped to his knees beside her, pulling her into his arms. "You're going to be amazing. We're going to figure it out together. Just like we figured out everything else." "I'm scared," Madison admitted. "My career is just taking off. What if I can't balance both?" "Then we'll hire help," Carter said simply. "Nannies, assistants, whatever you need. Madison, you don't have to choose between being a mother and being an artist. You can be both." The certainty in his voice steadied her. They told their families over Labor Day weekend. Madison's parents cried happy tears via video call, her mother already planning to visit and help when the baby arrived. Vivian's response was characteristically elegant, but warm. "How wonderful." The Ashford legacy continues. But more importantly, she'd added with a soft smile at Madison, "You two will be excellent parents." Emily screamed and immediately started planning the most elaborate baby shower Madison had ever heard of. Carter's sisters created a group chat specifically for baby advice and proceeded to overwhelm Madison with links to articles and products. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Madison painted through her morning sickness, claiming it actually helped distract her. She documented her changing body in a series of self-portraits, raw and intimate, that Lena suggested might make a powerful exhibition someday. Carter was attentive to the point of being slightly overbearing, monitoring her diet and sleep and stress levels until Madison had to sit him down. "I love you," she said firmly. "But if you ask me one more time if I'm drinking enough water, I'm going to scream." "You need to stay hydrated," Carter protested, then caught her expression and laughed. "Okay, I'll back off." A little. Winter arrived again, and with it, Madison's second solo show, titled Transformations. The collection explored change, growth, and becoming, themes deeply personal given her pregnancy and the whirlwind year she'd experienced. The show opened to critical acclaim. Madison Cole continues to evolve. One review raved, her work growing more assured and emotionally resonant with each piece. She is becoming one of the most important voices in contemporary art. Standing in the gallery, 6 months pregnant and radiant, Madison felt a completeness she'd never imagined possible. She had her art, her career, her family. She had Carter beside her, his hand resting protectively on her growing belly. She had a future that included both the studio and the nursery they were preparing, proving that she didn't have to sacrifice one dream for another. "Thank you," she whispered to Carter as they watched collectors examine her work. "For what?" "Everything. For carrying my groceries that day. For seeing me. For building this life with me." Carter kissed her temple. "Best groceries I ever carried." Their daughter arrived on a snowy February morning, tiny and perfect, with Carter's gray eyes and Madison's determined expression. They named her Vivian Rose, honoring both grandmothers, and from the moment Madison held her, she understood a love she'd never comprehended before. Vivian, barely 6 pounds of fierce personality, changed everything in the best possible ways. Madison's studio time became precious and scheduled, naps and feeding times dictating her workflow. But strangely, she found herself more productive, not less. The focused hours she had were spent creating with intensity and purpose she'd never accessed before. Carter took paternity leave, something almost unheard of in his position, but he'd been firm with the board. "My family comes first. They adjusted, or I adjust my role." The board adjusted. Those early weeks were exhausting and beautiful. 3 a.m. feedings where Madison and Carter took turns, both bleary-eyed but marveling at the tiny human they'd created, learning to coordinate schedules so Madison could paint and Carter could work while ensuring Vivian had constant care. They hired a nanny, Maria, a warm woman in her 50s, who'd raised 4 children and had endless patience. Madison had worried about letting someone else care for her daughter, but Maria made it easy, supporting rather than replacing them, giving them space to be both parents and individuals. By spring, they'd found their new rhythm. Madison worked in her studio 3 full days a week, with Maria watching Vivian. 2 days she kept lighter, painting during naps while being primary parent. Weekends were family time, all 3 of them, plus extended family who visited constantly. Carter returned to work but maintained strict boundaries. No calls during family dinner. No travel exceeding 3 days without extraordinary circumstances. His presence as a father was as committed as everything else he did, and watching him with their daughter made Madison fall in love with him all over again. Vivian's first birthday arrived with shocking speed. They threw a garden party at the Connecticut estate, intimate by Ashford standards, with only 75 guests. Vivian, wearing a ridiculous frosted birthday dress courtesy of her aunts, smashed her cake with gleeful enthusiasm, getting more frosting in her hair than her mouth. Madison captured the moment in dozens of photos, already planning the painting she'd create from this memory. That evening, after guests had left and Vivian was finally asleep, Madison and Carter sat on the terrace, watching fireflies drift across the lawn. 2 years, Madison said softly. 2 years since I asked a stranger to carry my groceries. Best worst day of my life, car breaking down included. Carter pulled her close. I was just out riding, trying to clear my head from a frustrating board meeting, wondering if I'd ever find something real in all the artifice of my life. Then this beautiful, flustered woman offered me $20 in ice cream. Fate, Madison said. It had to be. The probability of that exact moment, that exact intersection. It's staggering. Carter was quiet for a moment. I've been thinking about that, actually. About probability, and fate, and building something meaningful. I want to propose something. Madison turned to face him, curious. The Ashford Foundation has been primarily focused on traditional investments, safe bets with guaranteed returns. But I want to create something different. A fund specifically for emerging artists like you were. Grants and support for talented people who just need someone to believe in them. Madison's breath caught. Carter, that's incredible. I want you to help me design it, he continued. You know what artists need. What would have made a difference for you? We could create opportunities, remove barriers, invest in talent that traditional systems overlook. She thought about her 17 rejections, the years of struggle, how one person believing in her had changed everything. Yes, she said firmly, absolutely yes. Let's do it. They launched the Ashford Arts Initiative that fall, a fund dedicated to providing grants, studio space, and mentorship to artists from non-traditional backgrounds. The first round of grants supported 12 artists, and Madison personally mentored 3 of them, paying forward the faith Rebecca and Carter had shown her. The initiative received significant press, positioning the Ashford family as champions of the arts. But for Madison and Carter, it was deeply personal, a way to create the opportunities they wished had existed earlier. Madison's own career continued to flourish. She'd completed a major commission for a corporate headquarters, held 2 more successful shows, and was represented in collections across the country. But she'd also learned to pace herself, to protect time for what mattered most. Vivian's 2nd birthday found them back in Chicago, having a small celebration in their penthouse. Just family, cake, and a toddler who was more interested in the wrapping paper than the actual gifts. Carter watched Madison help their daughter tear into presents, and his heart swelled with gratitude. 2.5 years ago, he'd been going through the motions, successful but hollow. Now he had purpose, partnership, a daughter who lit up every room she entered, and a wife who'd shown him that real connection was worth more than any suitable arrangement. Madison caught him staring and smiled. "What are you thinking about?" "Everything," Carter replied. "How lucky I am. How that broken car was the best malfunction in history." Madison laughed, moving to sit beside him, while Vivian played with her new toys. "You know what I realized?" "What?" She gestured to their life, the art on the walls, Madison's and others, the toys scattered across expensive rugs, the beautiful chaos of their blended world. We created something neither of us could have built alone. Your resources and my art, your connections and my vision. We're better together than we ever were separately. That's what partnership is, Carter said. Not losing yourself in someone else, but becoming more fully yourself, because they see and support every part of you. Madison leaned into him, watching their daughter, listening to the sounds of their full, complicated, beautiful life. If I could go back to that August afternoon, she mused, to Madison with her broken car and melting ice cream and 17 rejections. What would you tell her? Carter considered. That stranger with the scooter is about to change everything. That's saying yes to help, to connection, to love, even when it seems impossible. That's what makes life extraordinary. And that the groceries were just the beginning. Just the beginning, Madison agreed, and kissed him as Vivian squealed with delight over a new toy. This was their story. Not a fairy tale where problems magically disappeared, but something better. Real partnership, tested and proven, built on mutual respect and unwavering support. It was art and commerce, Wisconsin and Connecticut, struggle and success, all woven together into something uniquely theirs. Years later, Madison would paint it. Not the individual moments, but the feeling of it all. The piece, titled Intersection, would show two paths converging, separate colors blending into something entirely new. It would hang in their home, a reminder that the best things in life often begin with unexpected encounters and the courage to say yes. What did you think of their story? Share your thoughts in the comments. On a scale from 0 to 10, what's your rating? Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to follow all our stories, and check out more emotional stories by clicking